Smart 24, driving business.
Welcome to our second hour Smart Minutes Business here, Smart 24 TV, where drive your business. And of course, just in case you just joined us, we're here all the way from 7 a.m. And of course, if you missed, you can catch us on YouTube on Smart 24 TV. And of course, more information on our social media platforms on Twitter and Smart 24 TV now. And of course, Facebook, Smart 24 TV official. Well, today we are always here to get you inspired and motivated on how you can move and start your day here in Smart Minutes Business. So wherever you are, today is Wednesday and the third day of the week. Probably, I believe you have to be really working so hard so that you finish up by Friday. You are really done. So I guess we shall first get motivated and we shall be back. Mathematical motivation. Well, of course, work hard and snack often so that you do not get a black burnout. Drink some water, keep hydrated. That is all I can always say. Well, of course, it takes courage for you to grow up and become who you are. So in every stage of life, you have to understand that there is a moment, there is a point of growth that this very situation is leading you up to. You can never grow unless you have challenges. Yeah, so definitely, I believe, I read this actually, and I got yesterday, I was reading a certain book and someone quoted it, and I realized that growth is a factor of life. It's not about size or appearance, but
fact of life in terms of
growth in terms of intellectually, not in terms of size. So you have to grow.
Do you know that there are certain things you will never know, not until you're at a certain age.
Definitely.
Because your brain has not matured to explore however much you may. That's why they told you that when you're young, your body's strong, but your brain is down. You can't think. You're ambitious. That's what you make. Yeah. If you're not advised, you make a lot of mistakes out of being too much ambitious. Yes. But as you grow older, as you become awake, the brain becomes stronger in terms of how you see things. I mean, that's why this whole saying comes in Obukademagez.
Yes.
There are certain things you will never understand till you reach a certain age. You may never know what it means for you to have stable grandchildren, not until you reach that age of being a grandfather. Right now, you're too ambitious and you're thinking about you yourself. And you're thinking that if you've not made it because you didn't make it in life, then you are about you. But you get, as you grow older, you realize that the success of your son, the success of your great grandson is actually your success. You feel attached to it, but it doesn't make sense right now because you want to kagwira or you want to experience it.
Well, of course, you've heard it from Andrew, definitely. But of course, in every stage, I believe in every stage, there is a point of growth. Because you remember when we were in school, there are classes that were really difficult. Primary 5, primary 6. In that moment, it was the hardest thing in life. And some had to rebound, go back. But then if someone, like someone comes up to you and then pieces are like, okay, this is quite easy. Because you're past that stage. You can now easily relate. You can understand easily.
Yeah.
So definitely that's how, in every stage of life, it's difficult. It's usually difficult. So you have to grow in it. Be tough. Like someone said, when life gives a lemon, make it
a lemonade.
Make lemonade out of it.
Yeah.
But of course, these days, people are no longer feeling the sourness of lemon. They feel they need something tougher. Because these are tougher times. I don't know what's more sour than a lemon. Yeah, so make lemonade out of it, make something beautiful out of it. And the challenges are the ones that make us grow. They make us tougher, have a tougher skin.
Yeah.
Don't be pushed around. When conveniences come, maybe you're at work in business, find a way of moving around it. Yeah. Not moving away from it. Move around it. Okay. So I believe that is for you today. It takes courage to grow up and know who you are. So if you grow, you realize the kind of potential you have.
You do have.
It's not until you face certain such challenge that you can never know who you are. You could never know how patient you are.
Challenges speak a lot. I mean, they evolve, and it explains why the developed world is why it is today. Because there was a certain period, the ice ages and all this, and the generations that existed at the time were influenced to be a little bit more innovative, so as to survive. Because if a time comes and all you need to do is to survive, you'll do whatever it takes. To actually survive.
Obviously, these days it's about survival.
Okay. Yeah. All right, now that brings us to the end of the inspiration moment. Now heading back to the point, to the discussion perspectives points about, we're discussing the Liberation Day, which is scheduled to 2 days. It's going to be a Friday. And we are examining the 38 years of the NRM rule, of course, getting to observe what has been the few achievements that have done, what have been the failures, and what is the way forward to see.
Me, I'm going to benchmark on poverty eradication or the likes. Well, I do not know, because there was a question I posed that is government really failing its programs? Because when you look at the 1990s, very many programs have come about. Yeah, there was actually in Tandikwa. Tandikwa scheme. There was also the rural farmers scheme, and then eventually Bondaba Gagawari. Yeah, and of course then there was the youth capital venture. So you can imagine all those programs have been set in place to eradicate poverty. But when you look at the statistics, people are more poor.
People are becoming more poor.
So what is happening? Has government failed to implement what they say? Or we could say the capital they are given is not enough.
Now, the issue comes here along that in Uganda and in Africa, we've been having a challenge of access to basic needs.
Yeah.
That's the first thing we need to know. And we judge the ability of an economy by we judge how good an economy is by its ability to help people have access to basic things or do basic things. Like if I can take my child to school, I can access medical care, with ease. I don't care what figures of growth it portrays out. Now, those programs, it is okay. They are good. They sound nice, and their framework sounds nice. But it's like if you do for those that did ICT, it's like I get a computer of 19 probably in 1990s, and I'm trying to upload a software of 2022. The hardware will definitely blow out. It can't handle that capacity, the electricity and all that. So it brings me back that whom are you allocating these programs to? And when they get this money, I mean, let's not even look from those programs. PDM, which has been considered one of the last kind of milestone to eradicate poverty. You hear stories of when people get this money, what are they using this money for? I cannot get 1 million and I know I don't have rent and I'm going to think of investing. Recently, I saw farmers in West Nile, not farmers, but they were traders. They were selling maize. They got PDM money, they invested in maize, but guess what happened? The market, they didn't get the market to sell what they had. But perhaps these people had needs, and I believe some regretted why they didn't use that money for something else.
Yeah.
Now I have money, my girlfriend wants hair. I've gotten 1 million. What am I going to do? Priority. Exactly. What I take priority at that time. So if that is not sorted out, I have to pay rent. I have to take my child to school. I have a medical bill to pay. So do you realize that economic growth and development comes exactly the needs? It's not about infrastructure. Marcia, I will tell you the truth. In 1970s, the roads were not largely tarmacked, but people sold their coffee. They took their children to school. So you have the infrastructure, but what is being transacted on that infrastructure? Or people passing in the V8s and all that, but what am I benefiting from the infrastructure? People did business way back when the infrastructure wasn't there. So I feel like the programs were really nice.
But they have not been beneficial to them.
They have not been beneficial.
There's a lot people need other than investing.
There is a lot of people.
I cannot invest yet. I know I'm going to sleep on an empty stomach today. Why wouldn't I pick 10,000 or 100,000 and do something?
Exactly. Now, still on that notice, what we are seeing on screen, we're taking it back in time in terms of trade, NRM's initial challenges and priorities. Now, that is definitely going to drive us back to the pre-NRM era shortly as we take a look at that, because we get to see that the average annual growth was at about 4.8% at that moment. We are talking about years between 1965 and 1970. Actually, there was a little bit of the GDP was at 4.8% between 1970
but
4.8 annual growth.
Days people were reliantly on agriculture.
Of course, agriculture has always been our reliant coffee.
But with development, people went to city centers.
City centers and all those. So you can see there average growth at 4.8% during that time, and this still explains to you that there was a sharp decline of about 0.2% after the 1976. That is due to political instability and Idi Amin's regime. And by 1980, the gross domestic product was only at 80% of the 1970 level, and income per capita, the average annual increase of was about 2.5%. We're talking about income per capita. That is between 1965 and 1970. And life expectancy dropped to 48 years. That was the time. These are statistics from the world leading organizations, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the Bretton Woods institutions, and Oxford actually has this research, out here.
So
we're seeing
the Britain institutions actually also determine the life.
No, because when we got independence from them, so they literally colonized us. So they have a clue of what Africa was like at the moment. Though some of the statistics may be a little bit to hinder foreign direct investment, such that you can have a certain picture. And, there is also this investment that the foreign direct investment that comes. By the way, you get to realize that even the foreign direct investment we've been receiving is exploitative in nature. It has an exploitative background and in nature. Now, a part of the reasons as why, what the economists say, why the economy kind of declined was the socialist policies that were adopted. Obote's regime was a socialist. And that's why you see after President Yoweri Museveni takes power in 1986, and we know that time it's when we had we were at the peak of the Cold War politics, and the dominant power was definitely the United States of America. It explains why when NRM takes over power, there is massive liberalization of the economy. There is privatization that is happening that way. Of course, all in line with the Cold War politics. So, still, can I say that the NRM government did it make these policies from an independent perspective, or there were global underlying factors that happened? We see Kenya. Kenya tried. Kenya and Tanzania. These are countries that got independence during this in the same period of time. Kenya adapted the capitalist perspective. Tanzania went socialist. Kenya seems to have benefited more from the capitalist perspective. Of course, they were close to the coast and they had an export-free zone. Uganda, we adapted still socialist. During, that was during Obote's time and Idi Amin's time, where there was belief in collective ownership of resources. But was that really fruitful? Because even the liberalization perspective hasn't put us anywhere. People, if a daily person can't get the daily needs, then I have reasons to doubt the strength of that economy.
No, I want to quote some statement that the president said actually some years ago, which contradict, with the shift of events and, evolutions. Well, he said something, in 1992, he said that there is no way that Africans can emancipate themselves from poverty and backwardness without carrying out an industrial revolution. And of course, as he said, as long as we continue to export cheap, raw and primary commodities, our present situation will not change.
As long as we keep exporting?
Yeah, as long as we keep. So that means it has been his song of, exporting cheap and raw materials. Yeah, since 1992, it has been the talk of us, shifting from exporting raw materials. So you can imagine, since 1992 till up to date, Uganda is in the same cycle. We're still talking about, this thing of talking about one thing
over and over, repeat it over and over.
What is happening?
Why do you think that happens? Because ask yourself why. Because in the time the NRM government took power, that was in 1986 up to 1996 when we had constitutional reforms. The issue there wasn't about I'm scared to leave power, because we see that a lot of focus has been transpired on maintaining power and not economic growth. Because people will tell you that the reason what we are facing in today has a lot to do with the first 10 years of the rulership of NRM. Because that's when they established the 10-point program, which involved quite a lot of stuff. And of course, we shall look at that. And part of what has been really achieved is the restoration of peace and stability. Because relatively, the time was full of political instability,
and more conflict.
More conflict and all that. And the development of a mixed economy with a strong private sector. Yes, it is strong, but who is dominating it? It is strong, but who's dominating it? If we talk about foreign direct investment, because as of last year, the foreign direct investment was standing at about 900 million US dollars. We have a target of 2.9 million US dollars. Which is strong. But on the $2.9 billion, where is your share as Masika Tsimi? Because that's why I'm saying the economy entirely, the liberalization aspect is not felt by the common person. That is the big issue.
It's the macro by the few.
The macroeconomic factors are not they're not interplaying with the livelihoods of the people. They are not connecting. In other words, people. That's what they call you are off the grid. We are off the grid. Let me tell you something. In the United States of America, in the UK, if something happened at the stock exchange market, it would entirely disrupt an entire economy, a glitch. But here, it's like you will still survive despite, inflation some people have. I mean, it beats your understanding, when there is inflation and some people have the money. The money is in the hands of many. It's not a general perspective like how we see that if something happened at the stock market, then the entire economy crumbles, purchasing power declines, scarcity is put out, production output is tampered with, causing scarcity. All those perspectives.
Of course, that is why we have we've seen disparities between the rich and the poor.
Exactly. Yeah.
Those who have, those who don't have do not actually have.
Yeah, the reforms, we cannot entirely say that the reforms have in existence, but if we are to look at it from the microscopic perspective, you get to realize that there is a lot. Like I told you, the strength of that, of any economy, for it to make sense to an individual, that because now, when you go to the reports, they indicate that from 1995 up to 2015, the economy, the annual growth rate has been at 6.7%, from 4.8% between 1965 up to 1975. I mean, we're talking about the pre-NRM times, the pre-NRM times versus post-NRM times. Pre-NRM, 4.8% annual growth from 1965 to 1978. 1995 up to 2015, that is 6.7 annual growth. So, about in a 20-year span, you still tell me that somebody can't access healthcare, can't take their children to school, and they study well. Well, I mean, there is quite a lot. This vis-a-vis the programs that are really being undertaken there, and it all has a lot to do with. I made a statement, and I said, the challenge is not about not having resources or not having the intellectual personnel, but the fact that sound economic policies are just a sign of political leverage to certain individuals. So I'll do whatever it takes to frustrate your policy. And we fail to separate economic growth and the politics. Yes. Who cares if it's Mercy that has cheered a campaign and it's helping people get out of poverty? At the end of the day, people's purchasing powers are increasing, and once they're increasing, they can invest. And once they invest, that's economic growth, because the economy entirely depends on the local person. And that is something I think which has been a little bit challenging for the past 38 years, having that stability, all coming in with with much more revenues spent on keeping the can I say power sustainability, staying in power, vis-a-vis focusing on economic growth and development. I gave you an example in China, the Communist Party ruling, but having different leaders over time, because they knew because China knows its history, it knows where it came from, and it's the reason that's why when Mao Zedong took over power, he abolished the Western ideologies from religion, education, style. They only maintained technology. And for our cases, I don't know why no leader could foresee in the future. We somehow kept the religion, the education system, and we got rid of the technology. So 50 years down the road, see the difference. So I would have expected probably the NRM to have looked into those factors, but there is still room for improvement, as we are still seeing a lot of, we're seeing oil mining. We anticipate seeing contracts that are being signed here and there. But let the common man really benefit from this. Like if you talk about the NAM summit,
I think that is.
Let people feel the benefit. But by the way, I congratulate President Yoweri Museveni for that. It actually shows you the stability he has in terms of managing the affairs of this country. But there is need more to be done. If you can, like I told you, if you can demonstrate to us that you can establish infrastructure in the shortest period of time, that means you're showing to us that you have the capacity to revive the country's entire infrastructure. It may not be exactly in months, but at least in a few years to come. And we can be perfect as a result of that. And I think that brings us to the end of this discussion. It's exactly 26 minutes past 8. Let's take a short break. And when we return, business and sports and entertainment.